For those of you who don't know, let me introduce you to the shooter game that seems to want to reinvent cover-based combat. Crossfire is a new narrative-driven third-person tactical action game developed by That's No Moon in partnership with Smilegate. It was officially revealed during Summer Game Fest of this year and is currently planned for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. While the name may sound familiar, this is not a traditional multiplayer Crossfire game. Instead, it is a complete reimagining of the franchise as a premium single-player experience focused on cinematic storytelling, stealth, tactical combat, and character-driven drama. The story follows two enemy operatives, Layla and Cross, who are forced into an uneasy alliance against a larger threat neither can overcome alone. The game appears to blend military action with grounded science fiction elements, creating a near-future setting that mixes conventional firearms with advanced technology. Now, one of the things that I was able to discern just from seeing this trailer is that the name Crossfire carries a lot of baggage, both in terms of the context of the characters in the story and in terms of the Crossfire genre as a whole. I didn't know that this was a title that already existed, and this is a reimagining of that. Hence why it's probably such a large amount of viewership that this amassed on PlayStation when it was announced and revealed during the Summer Game Fest presentation and then uploaded onto the PlayStation channel. The thing amassed over 500,000 views, is probably over 1 million at this point, or definitely on its way towards that. I didn't even know anything about this franchise, but clearly I can tell it's of significant renown and of prominence. So that's the baggage in terms of what the brand is and the scope of that and its magnitude and influence. But there's also baggage when it comes to the characters and the name itself. Not only is one of the characters named Cross, but they are in Cross as an entanglement with the enemy operative Layla, who have to sort of coexist even though they're from two different factions, which means at baseline they probably have two different ideologies as well, and what they think is right and what they think is wrong. So this probably is not what fans expected this game to be. I'm not one of those gamers who have played this or have any aforementioned knowledge with this title, but it seems to be a huge genre shift from what this game traditionally was. And the single player focus, though, I think it's very refreshing to see that, because the only first person shooter game I play is Call of Duty. I haven't really played anything else, and despite the fact that the quality of the Call of Duty games have continually decreased over the years, I have brand loyalty and I just buy them every year. It's kind of like a tradition. But with this, it's nice to see that it's taking that single player shooter genre and it's immersing it into a narrative driven game, a story, which is something that I love. That's my wheelhouse. So it's a story first shooter that immediately caught my attention, and I can't wait to get more details on this as the coming months go by and we get closer to the release of this title. So one of the biggest reasons Crossfire has generated interest is the talent behind it. That's No Moon was founded by developers who previously worked on major franchises including Call of Duty, Uncharted, The Last of Us, and God of War. The studio itself was formed specifically to create cinematic AAA experiences. Creative leadership includes veterans such as Taylor Kurosaki and Jacob Minkoff, developers known for their work on narrative-focused action games and blockbuster shooters. They stated that their goal with Crossfire is to merge cinematic storytelling with gameplay systems that feel deeply connected to the narrative experience. This is also the studio's debut title, meaning Crossfire represents the first opportunity for the team to establish its own identity outside of the franchises they previously worked on and contributed to. Now, this is just my opinion, might not even be true, but I think the term AAA veteran studio gets thrown around a lot. People who may have had a very minuscule hand in a title here or there, or they worked on some game that made a little bit of buzz, got a little bit of attention, a little bit of a rise, but it wasn't something meteoric or something truly grand like a God of War or like The Last of Us or like a Horizon or a From Software game, something like that. So I think that term is just thrown around. It's pretty broad, pretty nebulous, and a lot of people may try to attribute it to themselves even if they haven't even done something of grand recognition or something that amassed a lot of appeal when it comes to the grand scope of the gamers. However, when it comes to this team, they actually have the resume. They actually have the credentials. They worked on The Last of Us. They worked on God of War. They worked with Call of Duty. They work with these major franchises. These are verified IPs that people follow and are truly AAA titles. And this first game is also a huge test. It's always a huge test. It's your debut title, so it's open to the most scrutiny that I think the brand will receive, because people, their reception to new things is not always necessarily a warm one. People are not very generally welcoming of change, I've seen, and this may be the time at this particular junction in development and at the particular time in this new studio's identity where they're like, this new title's identity where they're like, I'm not sure if we're really going to like this. So there might be a lot of people who are critical, but there are also going to be people who love this game too, because I, for one, am someone who embraces the developer's intention to want to bring about change and innovation, and you can only do that by taking a bold new step and going into a new direction. So when you take something, there's a saying that everything is a remix, and when you take something that's derived from a source material but you put your own spin on it, you get something entirely new that's also reminiscent of the old thing, but it's its own brand new thing that's unique. It has its own identity, it has its own distinct features, and it's something that people grow to love. So you take developers that come from prominent studios and you put them together in their own thing. Well, now you get something new who they're charting their own way. They're charting their own path. So I think there's a grand potential to see influences from these studios that they're derived from Naughty Dog, from Santa Monica, from whatever. And there may be a potential Modern Warfare campaign influence, how they take certain ideas or they draw certain parallels that we've seen in a Call of Duty campaign, and we might see it reminiscent in here. But obviously with the new motion features that they've harped on, that's its own unique take on the entire scope of what we think this game will be. So it'll just be interesting to see what they do going forward. Now, the game's biggest selling point is a headline feature called adaptive cover. According to the developers, the system dynamically adjusts the person's stance based on terrain, nearby obstacles, and enemy positioning. Rather than snapping between predetermined cover points, the character naturally reacts to the environment. The developers described the system as an attempt to reinvent cover shooters by removing many of the limitations traditionally associated with the genre. They want players to think tactically while maintaining immersion and realism. Early footage suggests stealth, positioning, and situational awareness may be just as important as shooting accuracy. The game appears designed around lethal encounters where smart movement is critical for survival. So this biggest selling point that they have with the way that the cover system works in this game and how the players sort of adjust their positioning and alignment based on the enemies and the fire and all the bullets and everything, that's probably the biggest question mark right now, because we haven't seen, I don't think, that much application of it based on this trailer that we have here, which is still very nice. The graphics are good. The character dialogue seems to be like it's going to be good. The gameplay seems pristine. They're still refining it, of course, because it's still in development. But I guess the biggest question mark, is just what does this cover system entail in totality? What other components to it will there be? Is it far less to it than we think there may end up being? We don't know yet. So that's just something that we're going to keep our eyes out for. And I think this could genuinely evolve cover shooters. I'm not big on first-person shooter titles. Call of Duty, like I said, is all that I've played when it comes to those type of games. I haven't even played Saw yet, and it's over there, and that's not even really first-person shooter. That's third-person. But it would be nice to see how this evolves, how the cover shooting aspect of the game, what do they do to that? What does that entail? How do they magnify it? How will this sort of serve as like foreshadowing for upcoming titles or for other IPs and brands to follow suit, so to speak? So we don't know. It'd be nice to see how this evolves first-person shooter games in general. I think this may also become something as overcomplicated. The way that, because when the developers stated that this game is emphasizing cover shooting, the way I thought of it is like, okay, that's cool and all, the way that the bodies of the characters are moving as they navigate the terrain, but is that something that's that much of a landmark innovation? You see what I'm saying? Is it something that's that complicated or that complex to understand or to wrap your head around? And I think there may be an inherent risk associated with that, because gamers may be like, okay, we have the cover shooting, but are you really overcomplicating this fairly simple premise of being able to alter your positioning based on the combat scenario? So who knows how that's going to tie into it. I think there needs to be more of a natural feel when it comes to the gameplay. And I think this cover shooting, despite its simplicity and how I don't think it's complicated at all, I think that is something that contributes to the game feeling more natural. And I think this feature will either make the game or it will break it. So we'll see. Visually, the game appears to be targeting a grounded aesthetic similar to modern military thrillers, while introducing subtle sci-fi technologies. Cloaking abilities, advanced equipment, and futuristic enhancements suggest a setting that sits somewhere between realism and science fiction. The trailer also established a strong emphasis on the relationship between the two protagonists. Their uneasy partnership appears positioned as the emotional core of the narrative. The reveal trailer leaned heavily into cinematic presentation, character performances, dramatic dialogue, large-scale action sequences, and high production values were front and center.
So that's what I say when I look at someone like you. Bully.
See, that's where we're different. I genuinely like most people.
Oh, well, then you're truly a sick fuck.
As I make abundantly clear on this channel, this is my wheelhouse. This type of game, something that's narrative driven, single player, is very strong with the cinematics. And it kind of reminds me of games like The Last of Us, of Modern Warfare. I would say Uncharted. I've never played Uncharted, but based on the feel of this and on what I know and what I've seen from Uncharted, it kind of is reminiscent of that as well. And I think the character chemistry, it looks promising, and especially because their dynamic is so unique. They're from opposing factions, however they're forced to work together to face a common enemy that they will never be able to tackle on their own individually. So just based on the dialogue, the eye contact between them, the fact that it's a man and a woman, I think the potential for chemistry and, dare I say, even maybe romance at some point in the end of this game or maybe in a future title, I think all that is a possibility. The production value looks very expensive, which I would imagine because the quality of it looks amazing. And I think it feels far more mature, so to speak, than most first-person shooter or shooter titles in general, where you have this high degree of acting. We also saw this recently with Soros, how the degree of acting is just exponentially better and exponentially higher quality than a lot of things that we've seen in the past. I think this game could be pretty important. The shooter genre has increasingly shifted toward a multiplayer live service and extraction focused experience over the past decade. Crossfire is positioning itself as the opposite, a focused single-player campaign with no indication of live service mechanics. If successful, the game could help demonstrate that there is still significant demand for narrative-driven shooter experiences. Historically, titles such as Uncharted, Titanfall 2, and the Call of Duty campaigns have shown that strong single-player shooters can resonate with audiences. Crossfire appears to be pursuing that same audience. The project also represents another major attempt to expand the Crossfire brand into Western markets after previous efforts struggled to gain long-term traction. So I think the gaming market and landscape as a whole is ready and primed. It is ripe for the taking for a game like this. We have Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 coming out. That also looks promising. I know a lot of people are hesitant to not hold their breath about it, but that game looks promising. Then we have this coming out as well, which is also a single-player experience. So it's up for grabs who's going to be the first-person shooter, the shooter game in general of the year that we're going to be talking about. And you could argue that there's shooter fatigue. We got Soros, we got Call of Duty, we got games. People are still playing stuff like Overwatch and Marvel Rivals and stuff like that, where there are shooter characters in there. Fortnite, there's an abundance, there's a plethora really of games that are shooting based, and people might be getting tired of that. I, for one, don't play enough of it to get tired of it, but even if I did, I doubt I would, because I'm a gamer. I love games. I don't get fatigued from playing my console. I don't. Single player campaigns are becoming rarer. You know, I remember with certain iterations and versions of Call of Duty, I remember when we got Black Ops 4, there was no campaign in that whatsoever. And then we get to these later titles, like the one we just had, they introduce these other mechanics that are just they could be overwhelming to a degree. Not in terms of it's too hard to learn, but it's like you're adding too much extra into the game when you've kind of compromised your foundation. You need to go back to basics. You need to reinforce that, and then you can start to innovate more and more. So I think with them trying to kind of push away from their foundational material and content with a series like Call of Duty, that's where you kind of stray away from that single player campaigns that we're used to, that we could truly get immersed and lost in. We just kind of get lost in these confusing and unnecessary mechanics that don't really do justice to the overall reception of the game. But I think this could fill that gap that the player has missed when it comes to the single player campaign experience. And I think this is a potential sleeper hit for the generation. So while the title looks largely promising, it wouldn't be fair if you didn't have your own concerns or questions or criticisms. And me particularly, I'm wondering about when the release date will be, when this game is going to be coming out. We still don't have that. And mind you, it was just revealed. So it's not like I'm expecting it right now, but that's just a question that people will have, oh, when can we expect this? When is this game coming out? The gameplay demonstrations, they still remain limited because all we have is that Summer Game Fest reveal trailer where it looks incredibly promising, but that's all that we have to go off of. The full scope of the story, that's unknown. We know that there are two opposing operatives from two different factions working together to achieve a common objective, but we don't know what that objective is. We don't know the entity that they're going to be fighting. The long-term progression systems have not been detailed. Is there going to be a level up system? Is there a skill tree? Is there just different type of weapons that you find in the overworld? what is it going to be? We don't know that yet. The balance also between stealth and action, that remains unclear. Will there be more of a prioritization in terms of shooting and action, or will it be more so on stealth, or a combination of both? So we'll see. I, for one, also would like to know if this is a one and done campaign or the start of a franchise. Based on what we're seeing here, I really hope that it's the latter. Based on its reveal, Crossfire appears to be one of the most intriguing new IP adjacent projects shown at Summer Game Fest 2026. A veteran-led studio, a strong cinematic presentation, an emphasis on story, and a potentially innovative cover system give it a unique identity in today's shooter market. So this is one of my favorite reveals from this year's Summer Game Fest. I'm not so cautiously optimistic, I'm more so uncautiously optimistic. This looks amazing. The fact that people from The Last of Us had a hand in this, that's one of my favorite games all time. So I'm nearly sold. I just need substantially more gameplay before I'm fully sold on it. I've already wishlist the game. I think it has a strong potential to surprise people, and I think it's definitely a game that we all should be watching closely. So let me know what you think, whether you agree or disagree. I'm Harlem. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.